Okay, let's get back into this beautiful book, American Miscellany. It was published in 1865. Lovely little book. And we've been reading through it. The last one we did was essay number 44, which was on the boundlessness of the material universe. And whenever I find four-leaf clovers, I press them in books, and I guess I found a couple of four-leaf clovers. Oh no, that one's a five-leaf clover. I don't know if it's possible to see that at all, but you see? It's actually got 5 leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, whoa, no, 6. Look at that. 1, 2. Well, at least 5. Maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7-leaf clover. What do you know? I don't know how well anybody can see that. But here you go. 7-leaf clover. So anyway, I guess I saw fit to put that right there after the boundlessness of the material universe, which actually was kind of a boring essay, but let's go ahead and move on to essay number 45. We are on page 111 of American Miscellany, and we're going to get into some cod fishing. Why not? Let's learn about cod fishing. Although I had seen, as I thought, abundance of fish along the coasts of the Floridas, the numbers which I found in Labrador quite astonished me. Should your surprise, while reading the following statements, be as great as mine was, while observing the facts related, you will conclude, as I have often done, that nature's means for providing small animals for the use of larger ones, and vice versa, are as ample as is the grandeur of that world which he has so curiously constructed. The coast of Labrador is visited by European as well as American fishermen, all of whom are, I believe, entitled to claim portions of fishing ground assigned to each nation by mutual understanding. For the present, however, I shall confine my observations to those of our own country, who, after all, are probably the most numerous. The citizens of Boston and many other of our eastern seaports are those who chiefly engage in this department of our commerce. Eastport in Maine sends out every year a goodly fleet of schooners and pickaxes to Labrador to procure cod, mackerel, halibut, and sometimes herring, the latter being caught in the intermediate space. The vessels from that port and others in Maine and Massachusetts sail as soon as the warmth of spring has freed the Gulf of ice, that is, from the beginning of May to that of June. A vessel of 100 tons or so is provided with a crew of 12 men, who are equally expert as sailors and fishers, and for every couple of these hardy tars, a Hampton boat is provided, which is lashed on the deck or hung in stays. Their provision is simple but of good quality, and it is very seldom that any spirits are allowed. Beef, pork, and biscuit with water being all that they take with them. The men are supplied with warm clothing, waterproof oiled jackets and trousers, large boots, broad-brimmed hats with a round crown, and stout mittens, with a few shirts. The owner or captain furnishes them with lines, hooks, and nets, and also provides the bait best adapted to ensure success. The hold of the vessel is filled with caskets of various dimensions, some containing salt and others for the oil that may be procured. The bait generally used at the beginning of the season consists of mussels salted for the purpose. It's spelled mussels as in like meat mussels, not as in seafood mussels. Consists of mussels salted for the purpose, but as soon as the capelings reach the coast, they are substituted to save expense, and in many instances the flesh of gannets or other seafowls is employed. The wages of fishermen vary from $16 to $30 per month. according to the qualifications of the individual. The labor of these men is excessively hard, for, unless on Sunday, their allowance of rest in the 24 hours seldom exceeds 3. The cook is the only one who fares better in this respect, but he must also assist in curing the fish. He has breakfast consisting of coffee, bread, and meat, ready for the captain and the whole crew by 3 o'clock every morning, excepting Sunday. Each person carries with him his dinner ready cooked, which is commonly eaten on the fishing grounds. Thus, at 3 in the morning, the crew are prepared for their day's labor and ready to betake themselves to their boats, each of which has 2 oars and lug sails. They all depart at once, and either by rowing or sailing reach the banks to which the fishers are known to resort. The little squadron drop their anchors at short distances from each other, in a depth of from 10 to 20 feet, and the business is immediately commenced. Each man has 2 lines, and each stands in one end of the boat, the middle of which is boarded off to hold the fish. The baited lines have been dropped into the water, one on each side of the boat. Their leads have reached the bottom. A fish has taken the hook, and after giving the line a slight jerk, the fisherman hauls up his prize with a continued pull, throws the fish athwart a small round bar of iron placed near his back, which forces open the mouth, while the weight of the body, however small the fish may be, tears out the hook. The bait is still good, and over the side the line again goes, to catch another fish, while that on the left is now drawn up, and the same course pursued. In this manner, a fisher busily plying at each end, the operation is continued until the boat is so laden that her gunwale is brought within a few inches of the surface, when they return to the vessel in harbor, seldom distant more than 8 miles from the banks. During the greater part of the day, the fishermen have kept up a constant conversation, of which the topics are the pleasure of finding a good supply of cod, their domestic affairs, the political prospects of the nation, and other matters similarly connected. Now the repartee of one elicits a laugh from the other. This passes from man to man, and the whole flotilla enjoy the joke. The men of one boat strive to outdo those of the others in hauling up the greatest quantity of fish in a given time, and this forms another source of merriment. The boats are generally filled about the same time, and all return together. Arrived at the vessel, each man employs a pole armed with a bent iron, resembling the prong of a hay fork, with which he pierces the fish, and throws it with a jerk on deck, counting the number thus discharged with a loud voice. Each cargo is thus safely deposited, and the boats instantly return to the fishing ground, when, after anchoring, the men eat their dinner and begin anew. There, good reader, with your leave, I will let them pursue their avocations for a while, as I am anxious that you should witness what is doing on board the vessel. The captain, 4 men, and the cook have, in the course of the morning, erected long tables fore and aft the main hatchway. They have taken to the shore most of the salt barrels, and have placed in a row their large empty casks to receive the livers. The hold of the vessel is quite clear, except a corner where there is a large heap of salt. And now the men, having dined precisely at 12, are ready with their large knives. One begins with breaking off the head of the fish, a slight pull of the hand, and a gash with a knife, effecting this in a moment. He slits up its belly, and with one hand pushes it aside to his neighbor, then throws overboard the head and begins to prepare another. The next man tears out the entrails, separates the liver, which he throws into a cask, and casts out the rest overboard. A third person dexterously passes his knife beneath the vertebrae of the fish, separates them from the flesh, heaves the latter through the hatchway, and the former into the water. Now, if you will peep into the hold, you will see the last stage of the process, the salting and packing. 6 experienced men generally manage to head, gut, bone, salt, and pack all the fish caught in the morning. By the return of the boats with fresh cargoes, when all hands set to work and clear the deck of fish. Thus their labors continue until 12 o'clock, when they wash their faces and hands, put on clean clothes, hang their fishing apparel on the shrouds, and betaking themselves to the forecastle, are soon in a sound sleep. At 3 next morning comes the captain from his berth, rubbing his eyes, and in a loud voice calling, "All hands ahoy!" Stiffened in limb, and but half awake, the crew quickly appear on the deck. Their fingers and hands are so cramped and swollen by pulling the lines that it is difficult for them to straighten even a thumb. But this matters little at present, for the cook, who has had a good nap yesterday, has risen an hour before them and prepared their coffee and eatables. Breakfast dispatched, they exchange their clean clothes for the fishing apparel, and leap into their boats, which had been washed the previous night. And again the flotilla bounds to the fishing ground. As there may not be less than 100 schooners or pickaxes in the harbor, 300 boats resort to the banks each day. And as each boat may procure 2,000 cods per diem, when Saturday night comes, about 600,000 fishes have been brought to the harbor. This having caused some scarcity in the fishing grounds, and Sunday being somewhat of an idle day, the captain collects the salt ashore and sets sail for some other convenient harbor, which he expects to reach long before sunset. If the weather be favorable, the men get a good deal of rest during the voyage, and on Monday things go on as before. I must not omit to tell you, reader, that while proceeding from one harbor to another, the vessel has passed near a rock, which is the breeding place of myriads of puffins. Oh, puffins. She has laid to for an hour or so, while part of the crew have landed and collected a store of eggs. Yeah, that's why. And collected a store of eggs, excellent as a substitute for cream, I bet, and not less so when hard-boiled as food for the fishing grounds. I may as well inform you also how these adventurous fellows distinguish the fresh eggs from the others. They fill up some large tubs with water, throw in a quantity of eggs, and allow them to remain a minute or so, when those which come to the surface are tossed overboard. And even those that manifest any upward tendency share the same treatment. All that remain at the bottom, you may depend on it, good reader, are perfectly sound, and not less palatable than any that you have ever eaten, or that your best guinea fowl has just dropped in your barnyard. But let us return to the codfish. The fish already procured and salted is taken ashore at the new harbor by part of the crew, whom the captain has marked as the worst hands at fishing. There, on the bare rocks, or on elevated scaffolds of considerable extent, the salted cods are laid side by side to dry in the sun. They are turned several times a day, and in the intervals the men bear a hand on board at clearing and stowing away the daily produce of the fishing banks. Towards evening they return to the drying grounds and put up the fish in piles, resembling so many haystacks, disposing those towards the top in such a manner that the rain cannot injure them, and placing a heavy stone on the summit to prevent their being thrown down should it blow hard during the night. You see, reader, that of the life of a Labrador fisherman is not one of idleness. The capelings have approached the shores, and in myriads enter every basin and stream to deposit their spawn, for now July is arrived. The cods follow them as the bloodhound follows his prey, and their compact masses literally line the shores. The fishermen now adopt another method. They have brought with them long and deep seines, one end of which is, by means of a line, fastened to the shore, while the other is, in the usual manner, drawn out in a broad sweep to enclose as great a space as possible, and hauled on shore by means of a capstan. Some of the men in boats support the corked part of the net and beat the water to frighten the fishes within towards the land, while others, armed with poles, enter the water, hook the fishes, and fling them on the beach, the net being gradually drawn closer as the number of fishes diminishes. What do you think, reader, as to the number of cods secured in this manner at a single haul, 30 or 30,000? You may form some notion of the matter when I tell you that the young gentlemen of my party, while going along with the shores, caught codfish alive with their hands, and trouts of many pounds weight, with a piece of twine and a mackerel hook hung to their gun rods, and that if two of them walked knee-deep along the rocks, holding a kerchief by the corners, they swept it full of caplings. Should you not trust me in this, I refer you to the fishermen themselves, or recommend you go to Labrador, where you will give credit to the testimony of your eyes. The seining of the codfish, I believe, is not quite lawful, for a great proportion of the codlings which are dragged ashore at last are so small as to be considered useless, and instead of being returned to the water as they ought to be, are left on the shore, where they are ultimately eaten by bears, wolves, and ravens. The fishes taken along the coast, or on fishing stations only a few miles off, are of small dimension, and I believe I am correct in saying that a few of them weigh more than 2 pounds when perfectly cured, or exceed 6 when taken out of the water. The fish are liable to several diseases, and at times are annoyed by parasitic animals, which in a short time render them lean and unfit for use. Some individuals, from laziness or other causes, fish with naked hooks, and thus frequently wound the cod without securing them, in consequence of which the shoals are driven away to the detriment of the other fishers. Some carry their cargoes to other parts before drying them, while others dispose of them to agents from distant shores. Some have only a pickaxe of 50 tons, while others are owners of 7 or 8 vessels of equal or larger burden. But whatever be their means, should the season prove favorable, they are generally well repaid for their labor. I have known instances of men who, on their first voyage, ranked as boys, and in 10 years after were in independent circumstances, although they still continued to resort to the fishing grounds. For, said they to me, how could we be content to spend our time in idleness at home? I know a person of this class who has carried on the traffic for many years, and who has quite a little fleet of schooners, one of which, the largest and most beautifully built, has a cabin as neat and comfortable as any that I have ever seen in a vessel of the same size. The vessel took fish on board only when perfectly cured, or acted as pilot to the rest, and now and then would return home with an ample supply of halibut or a cargo of prime mackerel. That's by Audubon.